Good afternoon. The subject of today's lecture is galvanism. I'm going to address some recent research I've been carrying out and go into some detail, but I will keep the material accessible to a newcomer, as that's the idea of this lecture, both a detailed evaluative account of new research and an introduction, both concurrently, if I am to fulfill my funding brief. So bearing this in mind that we have a lot to get through, please keep any questions, clarifications, especially questions that are more like comments, until the end. Galvanism refers to muscle contractions that are created by electrical currents. As such, it is a field of the bioelectromagnetics, a term which breaks down pretty clearly into its components, bioelectromagnetics. Galvanism takes its name from Luigi Galvani, Italian obviously, who pioneered experiments in the late decades of the 18th century. Most famously, these experiments involved frogs' legs. My work does not involve frogs' legs, but it does involve the cultural impact of those experiments, their legacy, and so on. Galvanism was somewhat popularized in the collective imagination by a novel written in 1818 by the daughter of two political philosophers who spent a lot of time around romantic poets, around lakes, around literary types. This novel was Frankenstein, a book of summed, not much literary note, depending on who you ask, depending on which 18th century scholar you decide to take the Parkway train with, but it's a book which nonetheless constantly hangs over you as a researcher in the history of science. I'm not here to talk about Frankenstein, but I do have to cover a recent research trip I took. My area is the history of science, which means I work on how people have interacted with science, how they have learned about it, thought about it. As such, working on early electricity and galvanism is not a matter of dusting off old artifacts. It's a case of pinning down trends and attitudes towards galvanism, towards scientific research, because it's how it unfolds. Scientific research is the single biggest impactor on the way we live and die, and our relationship to that research, how it is covered up, trusted, celebrated, is what mediates that effect, defines it. All of this is exactly the kind of cringing justification I would generally object to. I shouldn't have to define my work in some glib two-sentence way. It's not accessible, it's not on trend, and it's not simple. All of this is the point. Work should be judged on whether it is good, thorough, and insightful. If it is, then it makes its own case. So, without wanting to sound discourteous, I'm not making excuses for my work or trying to persuade anyone unpersuaded that it's worthwhile. I am, however, making excuses for talking at length, as I'm about to do, about a recent research trip I took to the Antarctic. It might seem irrelevant and confusing, it certainly did to me, but I intend to make the reasons for its importance clear. The other thing I should make clear from the offset is that for those of you lucky enough not to be involved in the petty world of academia, funding is rare. You've pretty much got to take what you get, talk yourself up for things, and fit yourself into strange-shaped briefs. Any opportunities that come your way, you have to take seriously. That being said, the first I heard of this trip, I ignored it. Anyone would have. I received an email written in all caps. It read like spam, looked like it'd been written by a bot. It was like a phishing scam. I'd even heard of these things before, aimed squarely at academic insecurities. Your name has been mentioned in an article, or you're desired at a conference, that kind of thing. The first email read, "Dear Dr. Amherst, we are pleased to make your invitation to Antarctic Base Presidente Pedro Aguirre Cerda, Isla Decepcion. Your presence and expertise will be welcome." I stopped reading it. I carried on with some other work, a contribution to an 18th century module on history and science. Frankenstein, the science of Frankenstein, the science around it. Not uninteresting, but pretty well trodden ground. Work had been, it has been, to be honest, quite quiet. So it did prick my interest, though I was still sceptical when another email came through. To dear Dr. Amherst, we are sorry not to receive response. We repeat our invitation at your soonest convenience to attend Base Presidente Pedro Aguirre Cerda, Isla Decepcion, Antarctica. Our work here greatly benefits from your insight, and also ample time will allow for personal work. All expenses will be covered, including transportation, accommodation, resources, translation. We offer to you this brief fellowship of an esteemed research survey. We are most happy to receive your response. Yours in fellowship, Dr. H.V. Francis. So yes, it sounds ridiculous, fake. But as I said, work had not been busy. I'm not talking sob story, but mortgages, bills, groceries. And when funding is tight, people are petty. Claws were coming out in the staff room. I would generally neglect to mention this interdepartmental work I was doing on Frankenstein, for example. It would be nice to receive a stream of generous grants. Pursue your brilliance, be accountable to no one, that kind of thing. But that idea of research is it's a bit 18th century. Things are altogether more communal and corporate now, and more effective for it. But that doesn't stop some people, some men really, from having these hero complexes about their work, and it shouldn't get to you. But it does. And I have this one colleague who's not here, so I'll name him, Bruce, who really loves to ask you about your research. Hi Lynn, how's it going? What are you doing behind that bloody desk, behind those bloody papers? Presumably he was asking me this because I was being quiet about my work, or maybe because he wanted to talk about his work on lichen, which is, with awful, horrible inevitability, funded. Well funded. Anyway, it's Bruce I bump into. Just there. After weeks more of these emails, and after my tentative reply, after an enthusiastic response with an absurdly generous stipend offer and dates, and after more emails paired robustly with compliments and, it seemed, knowledge of my work, after my expressions of concern at the lack of detail and my eventual tentative acceptance, after a boarding pass arriving for a flight to Chile that evening, and after me calling British Airways to find out whether it had, in fact, been purchased by a Dr. H.V. Francis, it was then that I bumped into Bruce. Just there, as I'm coming down with my passport, which I had left in my desk drawer. He's drinking this red bush tea, which he brews in a huge, disgusting pot and microwaves cup by cup. And he says, "Hello." And I say, "Hi." He says, "Why the bag?" And I say, "Well, I'm going away." And that surprises him. That shakes him up a bit, because funding's the name of the game. And he says, "Research trip?" "Yes," I say. And he says, "Carol?" "No," I say. And he says, "Culat Omax?" "No," I say. And he says, "Who's funding?" "Co-press?" "No," I say. And I look at this status-obsessed man. This man who haunts the office, chewing your ear off with his boring news, eating other people's biscuits, but so stingy he'd fucking peel an orange in his pocket. "Bruce," I say. "And I've really got to go, actually, Bruce." And I leave him. But as I walk out the door, my last dignified option to turn back, suddenly closed, I realise I don't know the answer to his question. I have the boarding pass and there is a flight to Chile that evening. But I don't know who from. I don't know who's funding. I went to Antarctica though, and I brought this material back, the material I'm going to present tonight. I made recordings of the boat taking me there, and of the seals, of my conversations often through a translator, and of the ice. If there was a more straightforward way of doing this, believe me, I would, but this, I'm afraid, is going to be more a case of stitching the pieces together. This new research I'm doing.
Oh yeah? What's the project?
Well, it's a research project in Antarctica, actually.
Antarctica?
Yes.
Flip.
Yes, flip.
Where are you going to stay?
It's a Chilean research base Presidente Pedro Aguirre Cerda.
Pedro
Aguirre Cerda.
Jeez. So what's the project on?
It's quite difficult to explain, this one, actually.
Oh, come on, you can try me.
No, I know, it might seem like that, but actually it's one particularly difficult to summarise because, I haven't quite got the specifics
yet.
Yeah,
I know, it's not accessible.
No, actually,
specialised.
I know it sounds like that, Harry, but it's really not like that this time because I'm actually not...
Well, whatever. Let me know. Hope it goes well.
Okay, well, good luck with the job and fine about the bike.
Well, that's okay. I'm going to have to get one somewhere else because onboarding is Thursday and you may be some time.
What?
You may be some time.
Why?
That's what... Who is it? Someone said on Scott's expedition to the South Pole, before he stepped out of his tent, never to return, He knew he was going to die. I may be sometime.
Right, okay. Well, thanks for that.
Remember this.
No, I
So
know.
try me next
Yeah, no, I know. Thanks, Harry. Good luck.
I've got to go find this bike then.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you when I get back. Good luck with your job.
Good luck yourself.
Punta Arenas is the last city in Chile before the sea stretches out to Antarctica. It's still a thriving trading port and also does a healthy line in tourism, especially from cruises. Its free port status means it's somewhat of an unlikely hub for private enterprise in Chile, and as far as I can tell, with no particular specialism in science, but I'm in Punta Arenas when my brother calls me. It's the first trip on this research trip. I'm staying in a hotel which Dr. Francis Institute has arranged and paid for. The room is a twin with 2 hard single beds and a carpet that is definitely inexplicably meant to resemble grass. The instructions left at reception are to wait. Dr. Francis is arranging my onward journey. I've brought Frankenstein with me. I have to reread it for a paper I'm teaching on. I've read it before, but, well, as a younger woman. I was meant to read it on the plane, but I took to Valium and knocked myself out. Here, though, I haven't got much else to do, and I get it out. It's not really how I remember it. All the body horror stuff, which I used to find fun, is, well, getting under my skin, actually. In fact, I quickly find it's not what I want to be reading at all, but it's all I've got. I try editing some notes on early electricity and the Godwins, but these phrases from Frankenstein are stuck in my head in an unhelpful way. The energy of my purpose alone sustained me. My labours would soon end, and that amusement, I believed, would drive away any incipient disease. The words send me back to the book. I'm in my hotel room and I'm halfway through it, the bit where Frankenstein and the creature are in the mountains. It's the first time Frankenstein has seen what he created. The first time he's seen what he created since he saw the yellow eyes and ran. I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices in the ice among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes and I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived as the shape came nearer, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. Fucking terrifying. I mean, I've done work I'm not pleased with. I've even felt kept awake at night by things that I've written and regretted. But imagine encountering your work across a frozen valley after years wishing it had gone away, years being haunted by its trace. Christ. A fresh kind of nightmare. I'm wishing I'd brought anything else, some popular science book, the kind of book that normally pisses me off, the wonderful Book of Conkers or whatever, but I've got this. I expected this reception, said the demon. All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? It's the cabin fever. It must be, because I actually throw Frankenstein across the room. And just then, the phone in between the 2 beds starts ringing.
Hello?
Señora, hay una llamada para usted.
Sorry?
Vale, le voy a pasar.
Dr. Amers,
It's someone from the research facility, a translator, Ines. She tells me they've arranged my onward journey. I'm to get a lift on an American cruise ship full of pensioners who eat at the buffet, spot birds and attend lectures. I'm getting out of Punta Arenas. The boat will drop me off when the tourists get out to look at Antarctica. Through it all, I'm saying, okay, Reina del Magallanes, 8 a.m, and then she's gone. Hung up. I haven't asked her any of the questions that remain unanswered, the important questions. What are they researching? Who is funding them? How do they know me? Why do they need me? Who is Dr. Francis? Dr. Francis who I can't find through any of the usual routes. Where did where did they get their doctorate? These are the questions I'm asking myself, and no one useful, as the Reina del Magallanes plows south. The crossing takes 3 days. There is only water around us for the first few, no land in either direction. I avoid the other passengers. I'm not proud of it, but I avoid them like the plague. Frankenstein is still running around in my head. The book starts with a boat stuck in the ice heading north. Here though, south, there is just water. On the second day it starts snowing. Fat grey flakes soaked up by the sea. On the third day we are surrounded by icebergs. Through it all, I am retracing my public life, trying to find the connection with this place. Places I've been, articles I've written, connections I've made. There aren't many. They have been hard won, but are not that impressive. How do they know me, and why do they need me, is what I'm wondering as I'm heading absurdly towards them. Finally, we slow at the mouth of a bay. The water is dark and the land is bright ahead of us. This is Antarctica. There's a stench, god fucking awful, which I will later learn is penguins. And we approach a bay, the caldera of a collapsed underwater volcano. This is Isla Deception Island. And there's a boat coming towards us, a Zodiac, an inflatable motorboat, which is mine. On the gangway, the wind blows ferociously. The cold claws at my face. The Zodiac is waiting. It's driven by a man whose eyes I can just see through many thermal layers. He ushers me on board. I get on board and hunker down into my legs. And then we're alone. The boat is small. I'm further south than the vast majority of people who have ever lived have ever been, heading towards the world's only continent without an indigenous population. All these huge circumstantial facts are wrapping their knuckles around the inside of my skull, meaning approximately nothing. An unpopulated continent. But there's a shape on the shore we're heading towards, bulky in clothing, a blot at first, but it's getting clearer and clearer, and it's waving.
His countenance instantly assumed an aspect of invincible and terrified, to seek what thoughtful, and a demand for being pursued by the same
What a great pleasure it is to meet you at last. Wow! You look wonderful. Even after that crossing, everyone's so good on those little boats, huh? Oh, what a beautiful day to make the journey. Wow, it's really clear. We have some terrible winds. You'll see some damage to the base, actually. Yes, but a great day to make the trip today. Wonderful. You look so gorgeous. And did you see some penguins? Everywhere the penguins. And they stink. Wow, I did not expect it. Okay, give me your bag. The historic research base Presidente Pedro Aguirre Cerda. Dr. Francis is so sorry he couldn't meet you here himself. He had to conduct some research, some field research. It was urgent, actually. But he said, Ines, you give our guests the warmest Antarctic welcome. I always tell my English friends this joke. Santiago is historic and it's spectacular, but Antarctic is the most chilly place of all. Terrible dollar. This is my first contact with the base, with Antarctica. It's important when things might become unclear, when they might become unclear later on, to establish the facts, the known knowns. March 7th, 2018, Deception Island, me, my bags, this woman, Ines, born in Valparaiso, worked in Punta Arenas, and now here as a translator. Beyond us, a sprawling complex of low red buildings. Some steam. But apart from that, no signs of life. In physics, in mechanics, there's something called a two-body problem. The problem is to determine the motion between 2 points with no external points of reference, bound only to each other. I learned a lot about this from someone recently, and I've found myself thinking about it in terms of bioelectromagnetic fields, but more specifically what those fields represent. It can be difficult to trace progress when a scientific field develops in effect its own agency. I'm not being fanciful here. There are certain areas of science where we simply don't know what we are getting ourselves into. Investigation can give birth, sometimes literally, to new intelligence, and so research becomes less a case of chipping away incrementally to find a stable fact, and instead it becomes a game of catch-up where the scientific field is in itself developing and moving. When it comes to this situation, it's like cracking a two-body problem, which is why I'm establishing the circumstantial factors, the concrete factors, the geographic and temporal factors to establish the field for our problem. There's a misconception that Antarctica is vast, white and silent. You don't expect the colours of the ice: blue, turquoise, dark grey, and of the rock, rust red and black. You don't expect the noise, the ice heaving, and the penguins and seals keening above and below the surface. It's noisy. Always noisy, Ines tells me brightly. It takes weeks to get used to. I can't sleep on the first night. My bedroom is small on the south side of the main building. I have a narrow bed and a high window, which is too high to look out of, which allows cold light to shine through it right up until 11:30, which begins again at dawn, which is just before 1 a.m. I lie there wearing the eye mask Ines gave me. She told me that Dr. Francis will be back in the morning. She has shown me my room, shown me the communal space down the hall with wider windows overlooking the Horseshoe Bay. that we came into. She has offered me tea, coffee, mate, given me coffee. She has told me about her background and asked me about my life in the UK. And she's repeatedly said that Dr. Francis is the best person to explain the work being carried out here, that I am supposed to assist, that he will speak to me in the morning. I know that the base is non-governmental, a rare private enterprise in Antarctica. She apologises repeatedly for Dr. Francis's absence, encourages me to get on with my own work, excuses herself to finish off some personal admin, and gives me the eye mask for the night. It's industrial strength. No light gets in. Necessary for the unending hours of summer light this far south. I lie there wearing it in a complete private darkness, exhausted but sleepless. The loss of my sight, of course, intensifies my other senses, my hearing. I can hear the seals. I have to concentrate, picture them as animals because the sounds are so strange. I can hear the wind howling down drain pipes, moving drifts of snow, shaking flagpoles. I can hear the ice heaving and booming. Then there's the sounds of machinery coming from deep within the complex, but which I can't ascribe to anything. They're irregular, self-possessed, inhuman. I'm not usually a delicate sleeper, but I lie awake all night under the mask. In the morning, I'm ready to get on with things, ready to meet Dr. Francis. I go down into the communal area. They're not there. I go further down the corridor, where there are many locked doors. No Dr. Francis, no Ines. I return to the communal area to wait for them. I find a kettle, some instant coffee, some milk, soft cornflakes. It's not cold enough indoors to see your breath, but the water is cold enough that drinking it feels like swallowing stones. The minutes pass slowly. Dr. Francis does not appear all morning. Neither does Ines. I don't exactly feel like returning to my work, and I feel even less like returning to Frankenstein, and it's not exactly a matter of going outdoors to explore. Ines was emphatic about not going outdoors without supervision. It's not as wild and desolate as I'd have imagined. But she kept obscurely referencing risk and difficulties, but much more than that, I'm not sure what there is to explore. Beyond the complex, there is just snow, earth, ice, noise. There may be some time. My patience runs out, and I decide to go to find Ines. The corridors are narrow, plain, strip-lit, divided by heavy, swinging doors. If there's anything guiding me, deciding which corners I turn, it's the noises of obscure machinery that are coming from deep within the complex, but which I can't find no matter how hard I try. They're ahead of me, then they're below me, then they're behind me. Every now and then, I try a door. Invariably, they are locked. Whether there are laboratories or cupboards or offices or gigantic morgues behind them, I don't know. I still don't know. I decide to go back to the communal area, and when I can't find that, being more pissed off by the second, I realise I'm lost. It's more boring than distressing, the same corridors, one after another. Then I come to a door with an A4 printout on it, reading De Wars Defectuosos. No entra. De Wars Defectuosos. Not for the first time, not for the last. I cursed my shitty Spanish, but it's a sign of life, and I tried. It's locked. Another corner though, and there's a strip of white, a strip of daylight. I walk towards it, faster now, my footsteps deafening. I push open the door. It's my bedroom. The unmade bed. The small, high window still allowing cold, bright light to come through. My bag half open. I catch my breath. Try to make sense of the route I've taken, some kind of circle to get back to here. I look over my stuff and I decide to go back to the communal area where at least I can look out, where I can check my phone, but there's no bars, no signal, of course. I will return to the communal area and find a plastic bowl, reading, "Please hold on. Dr. Francis has been delayed." I will feel the first true creep of dread. Isolation. I will return to my room for any kind of distraction, for Frankenstein, and I will turn my bag inside out when I can't find the book. I will return to the common room where at least I can look out, and I'll look out, and I'll see something. Something unusual. Yes, now I should say, Galvanism didn't end with Galvani. In 1803, his nephew Luigi Galvani's nephew Giovanni Aldini visited London. The visit was cut short and Aldini found himself having to flee the country. Aldini had continued his uncle's experiments with bioelectromagnetics with noted success. He moved beyond frogs' legs to larger specimens, cows' heads. Then in London, at Newgate Prison, he demonstrated the progress he had made with experiments on the body of George Foster, a just-hanged prisoner. The body was laid on the table and Aldini connected electrodes to its face. The jaw began to quiver. The eye opened. He connected electrodes to the legs. An arm raised, fist clenched, and the legs began to move. Aldini was demonstrating the culmination of years of research in electrostimulation. His audience was in awe, but it only took the rest of that night for the awe to become outrage, fear, suspicion. Aldini was playing God. He had gone too far. He was working in defiance of death, in defiance of humanity. The eye opened, a fist clenched. The audience glimpsed something that they feared could not be controlled. He was chased out of the country, but there was no undoing what he'd shown the crowd, no undoing what he had begun. Nowadays, there's a term for this kind of science, transhumanism. It's a term used by a broad group of scientists, pseudoscientists, pseudo-intellectuals, desperate people, normal people, for a term which explicitly refers to science which aspires to outstep the confines of our humanity, to become more than human, to bypass the restrictions of illness, weakness, even death. Research in these fields is various and ongoing, often privately funded, entrepreneurial. There's money to be made from common fears. A lot of people spend a lot of money not to be cremated, not to be buried, but to be preserved cryogenically and wait for science to catch up with them. I learned a lot about this from a Dr. Ignacio Clavel, but as he first tells me about these details, I'm not sure why he is explaining it to me. Our conversation is disjointed and I fear things are getting lost in translation. Ines is mediating long stretches of Spanish with a few short phrases. disconcerting. Dr. Clavel tells me the most economic option in terms of space and cost is to preserve the cephalon rather than the whole body. The cephalon, the head, I ask. Yes, the head, says Ines. In doors muy grandes, says Dr. Clavel. In really big doors, says Ines. It's Dr. Clavel who describes the two-body problem to me. Two bodies in constant motion determine the motion between them. I'm missing the links in this conversation. My headache is worse than ever. I can feel exhaustion rising behind my eyes. This is after, of course, I have found them. Dr. Clavel has thin skin spread over his features. He gives me a yellow smile and tells me he's pleased to meet me via Ines. He tells me he'll be pleased to have a coffee with me to explain the work we'll be doing, that he'll be helping carry out the research. I've had enough, though, of all of this niceties and deferments, because I want to know, firstly, what machinery is making that noise, and secondly, what the machinery is doing, and thirdly, what I will be doing, if anything, while I'm here, and finally, if there's anything I can use to block the fucking window at night. But first, I have to show them something that I saw, and I bring them back into the communal area where I saw it. Que viste, says Dr. Clavel. What did you see, says Ines. I explain what I saw, and I do it reasonably, especially considering the strange day I've had in this strange place. And it's now that I begin to feel things are getting lost in translation, because I say, a person! Someone was there! Ines swallows and relays this to Dr. Clavel. It's hard to say from this distance, but they looked enormous, huge. Ines relays this to Dr. Clavel, whose expression hardens. And then after them, I say, and then after them came a second person. I mean, the second person came after the first, and it looked like they were chasing each other. The colour from Ines's face starts to drain. She looks young suddenly and ugly. Do you have people out there? I say, are you doing research out there? But Dr. Clavel only asks through Ines, where were they going? I don't know where they were going. I say, I just saw them come over the ridge and then they disappeared again behind the ridge. But I mean, do you have people out there? And what kind of institution are you running with people chasing each other across a frozen valley? I mean, it's just us, isn't it? Just us here, us three? After a totally inscrutable silence, Dr. Clavel starts speaking even, considered Spanish, then puts his hands in his lap, and Ines translates. Humanism is the scientific belief and practice that we can transcend the limitations of humanity. I say belief because this comes with absolute certainty that science will catch up with us. So many people decide not to be buried, not to be cremated, but to be preserved, or preserved in parts. To wait for science to reawaken then. For many, the most economic option is to preserve just the cephalon. Yes, the head. In really big doors. I feel dizzy. I'm starting to feel my sleepless night, and the steady grey daylight outside is making it worse. I don't understand how what Dr. Clavel is telling me is an answer to my question, or even an evasion of my answers. Then he's explaining the two-body problem, abstract physics theory, which is ringing a distant bell, maybe something in my undergraduate studies. But why is Ines gasping suddenly? Why is she starting to cry? There were very few experts in galvanic research. There were very few institutions carrying out the experimentation in transhumanism. Oh, Dr. Amherst, if only you could see the success that we have had, but we have a problem of recovery. Our experiments have been too successful, you might say. Dr. Clavel is pensive now. It was perhaps a problem of combination. Two parts from discrepant clients. Transhumanism was never going to bring back both bodies. Instead, a new body. Yes. He sighs. Ines shakes. I want to go, I say. I want to leave. When can I leave? Now Dr. Clavel's expression becomes severe. His head is slowly shaking. Ines is frantic. No, you cannot leave. You cannot leave yet. Can I speak to Dr. Francis? When can I speak to Dr. Francis? Ines says, soon, soon. You must stay here now. You cannot go. And I say, when can I leave? In my bedroom that night, I'm tired. So tired and probably hungry somewhere. But the light is still flooding in, and my mind is racing nonsensically now. Like a waking dream, I'm not coherent. I get out paper and try to note down the journey I've taken so far. Punta Arenas, Santiago, the cruise ship, the facts, the known knowns. Try to straighten out my thoughts.
Reserve in facts. To wait for signs. For the waiver. Dr. Francis is so sorry. He couldn't do it himself. He had to go out into the field with us research. He heard you. The baby tried to shake the man, the carrying the gigantic statue sat in his sledge. We watched the rapid progress of the traveller with our telescopes until he was lost among the disappearing quantities.
I can't believe you don't remember me talking about the restaurant I did. I was so fixated on it when I was like 9 or 12.
And did the man whom you pursued travel in the same fashion? Yes.
Dusk finally comes as midnight approaches, and I find myself looking up at the window, wishing on that hour of dark. It's like comfort. It comes at last. Dusty grey, half dark. And as my eyes are slowly closing, sleep finally coming, I see, there for an instant then gone, but I'm sure, a face, a human face, blank, expressionless, male, probably higher surely than anyone's face could reach. But it was there. The eyes burned with life. I saw it. My phone was ringing. I have signal.
You have one unheard message. First unheard message.
Hey, Lou, it's Harry. I thought you might not get my signal if you're down there, so I guess you're there. And time to go. Wicked. I got a bike sorted anyway, and onboarding was so good. I am so gassed for this job. But listen, Lou, I looked up the place you're going, Deception Island, and that base, Pedro Aguirre Cerdo, that was destroyed in like the 60s. 68, I think. There was an eruption from the volcano, totally unpredicted. It's pretty interesting, actually. But how come you're going there if it's destroyed? Weird one. Would love to hear about it. Anyway, be careful down there. Let me know how it is. Take pics.
And this message. To delete this message, press 7. Message deleted.
As I cross the snow from the base to the shore, the night has already turned and dawn is beginning brightly in the east. Maybe the dark was what I needed to find my way, because I found my way. Down the corridor to the entrance, past the stack of snow boots and out. The snow thins out to gravelly volcanic rock. As I approach the water, a zodiac is bobbing silently. And pushing it out is a figure in heavy, hooded, waterproof clothing. Enormous. Towering. I approach without hesitation. The figure turns to face me in the just emerging light. I squint at it, but its face is covered by many thermal layers and snow goggles. I pull my own hood and balaclava tighter around me, check my waterproof trousers, and wade into the black water. When I am beside them, the figure, the man, I can hear slow, even breathing, almost deliberate. I climb on board. I shuffle to the front of the boat. The hooded figure climbs aboard too, starts the motor. The Zodiac whines and moves fast away from the land towards the mouth of the caldera. As daylight extends against the red cliffs of the island we are speeding away from, fat, glossy penguins swimming alongside us. As we leave the island, a flare rises up, inaudible in the distance where the base lies, magnesium white against a white sky. Then is gone. This is what I saw. What happened. I don't want to jump to any conclusions further than what I am sure of, but I did become convinced of certain things I had thought before. I explained earlier how my research is involved with culture and science, and for me so much of that relationship is held in galvanism. So much is held within that moment when an audience saw a just hanged man's eye open, his fist clench. What I hadn't given too much credence to, and which is strictly outside of my professional interests anyway, is that galvanism might still be in practice. The aims, yes, but the actual electrical stimulation, the stiffening of muscles, no. Not now, I had assumed. Perhaps it seems I was wrong about that. But if I am to take my work seriously, everything that I have worked on so far, then I realise there is another conclusion that I need to make, one that I am here tonight to propose. Whether or not galvanism is in practice, it may as well be. Scientific research is out there, conducting the same fields. Scientific research with its own agency. This is not news. Which is why I thought it important to share this message with you tonight, to share this warning. Because the other day, 3 days ago, back in the office now for a few months, things are as they were. I received this email from the same address that began it all, written in all caps. Dear Dr. Amherst, I hope you are most well. I am most sorry we could not encounter each other during your visit to base Pedro Aguirre Cerdo. I continue to work on our urgent recovery project and now immediately must travel to Europe. Now I would desire to meet you with maximum urgency. You have indispensable knowledge relating to this project. I look forward to your contact to prevent some possible danger. With kindest regards, Dr. Hernan V. Francis. It may as well be happening. Well, I don't know about the currency of galvanic research, but if I did learn one thing from that research trip, it's how to identify bullshit. Dr. Francis, whoever he may be, missed his chance, and there is no longer any risk of me pursuing this any further, no matter how grindingly dull the faculty work is, no matter how much Bruce goads. I will not be pursuing this. And any more emails that come through, will be staying safe and untroubled in the trash.